Hi everyone. We got Tim Lawson today. Hi Tim.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, thank you for joining us all the way from afar. Yeah,
It's a
thank you.
pleasure being here.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. I love hearing stories of paintings, and then when I talked to Tim beforehand, I said, Tim, let's share some stories about these paintings. I think, to me at least, and I think for Tim too. I always enjoy listening to stories, and I believe most paintings have these stories behind them. So that's why I think it's just important to get this information out and enjoy these beautiful paintings that Tim is going to be talking about. The show is at the Brinton Museum. It's titled Recollections and Reflections, and it started on the 15th of May, I believe, right, Tim, and goes through September 6th.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and it's in Bighorn, Wyoming, and there's 53 paintings spanning about 39 years of Tim's painting career. I think the first one is 1982, so we're going back in time with these paintings, and so it's a great reflection of, I guess, time to look back on Tim's paintings. So Tim is gonna just talk about these paintings. So yeah, I'm gonna let Tim talk, and he knows he knows the story behind all these paintings. So take it away, Tim.
Well, good morning. I like that we started here with this painting is a little 8 by 10 piece titled Autumn on Bobcat Creek. This is probably the most personal painting I've ever done. I had met Dory on a blind date set up by Sue Simpson's parents, Senator and Ann Simpson. And I wasn't all that excited about the date to begin with, but once I saw Dory, we kind of a whole weekend around the museum, and then we were up at the Simpson's Ranch, and Sue used to host artists that would come. And Dory and I went for a hike the 2 days after our official blind date, and we went up to the beginning of the headwaters of Bobcat Creek, and took some sandwiches, and she had a book, and we spent the afternoon. I did this piece, and by the end of the afternoon, I had an idea that I was going to ask her to marry me. So I waited for 3 months on our third date and proposed to her at the end of December. And
Wow.
she said yes. But we were, I put this painting in a sale, and it sold, and then it was given back to us as a present. So
Wow.
it's one of those that my life, and there's a term we married up, and I definitely married up. Dory is probably the greatest thing, most certainly the greatest thing that will ever happen to me. And so this is one of the few paintings that I'm really glad we have. And it was just a little on the spot piece, and it just it was a reminiscent of that day and of the whole weekend.
What I love is, as I zoom in, I'm going to zoom in a little bit of the thin and the thick passages you have. It was as you said, it was painted from life. So time, the sun is moving, and you had to move at a certain pace. But I just love the thin and thick passages that you have in this painting. It's really beautiful.
And this is oil on a paper board. A lot of times when I'm in the field, and particularly when I'm hiking, I'll just use a paper board. It's designed for oil paint. It's brittle, but it's very lightweight, and so it was. I think that creates a lot of that thick and thin. You can put a wash down, and it absorbs into the board quickly, and that allows you to come back in and make adjustments and work over the top of it. So
it's very similar to. I'm not a musician. I don't even play an instrument. But when I listen to music, or read literature, it's that softness of the tone, and versus if you can put it into that, right? It's kind of similar to that to in painting, where you have the thin and thick passages.
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah, love it. Yeah, it's such a. Let me zoom back out. It becomes a different painting when you zoom into it. It becomes more of an abstract piece, but it holds up even there in close up. Yeah. Do you want me to jump to the next?
Yeah, what do we have next?
Yep.
So this is a drawing, or actually probably technically a mixed media, because it does have a little watercolor on the ear tag there. But there was a cow that it passed away. It died in the field and on our neighboring ranch, and I was able to gather the bones and articulate the skeleton. But this was a piece of really a study and observation. For the longest time, I always thought that I was kind of gifted with a heightened sense of observation. I always kind of half jokingly said that it was an occupational hazard being a painting. And it made me realize that my observation is no more acute or no more honed than anybody else, unless I'm really focused. And I grew up here in northern Wyoming, and I've seen cows and Black Angus cows my whole life, but it wasn't until I started this drawing and I really started to concentrate and focus on it that I realized that my observation is no more heightened than probably the average. After I had articulated the skeleton and used the skeleton for measurements to all the proportions, but I really thought about doing the drawing because I just assumed they're Black Angus and they're mostly black. And then when you really start to look at them and study them, they're kind of every color but black. They have these beautiful, warm, russet colors where, depending on how the light hits the hair and the hide, you get these cooler reflections and then these deep, rich darks. And I learned so much doing this. This was a total about just a little over a 3-year project. And I'll never look at a Black Angus the same again. Now, when I'm out in the field and I'm sketching and I see a little highlight or a little where the hair folds, I know anatomically what's causing that underneath. And so
yeah, and by the way, if someone cannot get to the show, what size is this?
This is technically 59 3/4 of an inch by 97 inches. So the cattle look relatively big when they're out in the field, but when you bring them indoors, they get quite large quickly. So,
and this is pretty much life size, or right?
It's exactly. Yeah. Well, within a 1/4 of an inch, it's a life size, and it's really kind of a combination of 3 or 4 cows that I put together. And I used some photographic reference, but I did have the articulated skeleton to really help me with the proportions and the measurements.
And again, the medium is.
There's a wonderful pencil company called Derwent. It's an English pencil company, and they make these wonderful water-soluble graphite pencils, but they're called Graphitint. And they come in this beautiful range of russets, warm grays, cool grays, some bluish greens, and some cooler colors. And so I would, scribble in the main masses and then take a big mop brush and wet them, and then it would dry, and then you can manipulate it just like a drawing. You can lift it up with a needed eraser, and I have a little electronic drafting eraser, and so I'm able to continue to add and subtract and build up the layers, even though it's drawing and not a painting.
Even finding paper for this, was it a challenge to get I mean, because this is ginormous. I mean,
yeah, I found a beautiful watercolor paper that came in a 60-inch roll. And then, the length of it could have been any size. Okay. But I decided early on to turn her head where she's engaging the viewer and looking at the viewer.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. Yeah. I haven't seen the piece, but I'm sure it's impressive when you see the actual physical life size of this. I mean, that must.
It has a little weight. It takes a good portion of a wall.
Okay, so you need wall space for this. Yeah. You won't miss this piece as you're walking through if somebody puts this in their collection, let's just say, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Great. Let's see, let's jump to this one. Love this contrast in this piece.
So this was there's just a wall tent for a number of years, a group of us. And one of the great things about plein air painting is the ability to be together with friends and colleagues and fellow artists. And Jeff Parker would organize a pack trip into the Cloud Peak Wilderness. And for a number of years, Bob Barlow would go up. And I think in this particular trip, my father-in-law and a wonderful book illustrator and Wendell Miner came out. And my father-in-law always loved to paint as well. And so we had a great time. And this was just the tent that Jeff and Wendell and I stayed in. And it's just a wonderful camaraderie that goes. Fortunately, art is a kind of a solitary thing. And even though you're on a trip like this, that once you start work, you can be right next to, one of your other artist friends, but you're kind of isolated. And I have a jealousy of musicians that can be in their element and feed off one another. That artists, that visual artists, we don't have that ability, because once you really start to paint, you're on your own for the most part.
I don't know about you, but sometimes, because it's a lonely sport, right? So if you do get together with some other artists, actually you tend to chit chat sometimes more, because you're so excited that there's someone with you, a friend of yours or something. That could happen too, where you're not even painting as, concentrating on the painting as much. So.
But it's a wonderful wonderful time. I miss them. I haven't been on a pack trip for a number of years. I hope that to do it again at some point. But
I love the thick, again, the poetry of the thick and thin paint, the thick of the white and the thinness of the so right in here in the shadow area,
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I think it's so important. I think when someone looks at it, they should like it, but the reason it works because of these things, and it's the artist's job.
And that trying to design with the warmth of the sunlight, and then the cooler, cooler than areas of the shadow side and the creases in the tent and everything, and then of course you have that warm illuminated light coming from inside the tent. And so it's a play and an arrangement of those warmer than and cooler than areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes those things you play up as an artist too. I mean, they're not necessarily as intense or less, right? That's again your job as the storyteller.
Yeah, and when you're out on location, you kind of pick and choose. When you're successful, they have a spontaneity and a freshness to them. I view the plein air pieces as completely different as my studio pieces. And in the studio, you have much much more time to develop it and really kind of
Right.
refine your idea, and enhance the composition to make a hopefully a more cohesive
Yeah.
statement. But these plein air pieces or on the spot pieces, there's a freshness to them that can be appealing also.
And I love the abstraction in the background. You play that down to play the tent up. You know, it's because
I wanted just again. You want kind of a darker background there to kind of set up the sunlit part of the tent.
Yeah.
But you want it to, you don't want it to compete with the tent, so you make a natural selection to simplify that. Yeah. And it just where the viewer can focus on the tent or on your subject or kind of the star of the painting. A lot of times I think of it like casting a play of who's going to be your star and what's going to be your co-star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's the reason I'm asking you these questions too. I think if someone's watching this and they're going to go see the show, I'm always hoping a collector they get more refined, just like the painter gets over the years with their visual, how they're looking at something, and they'll see beauty in the ones that truly have that thing, because not all paintings are created equal.
I think that's one of the biggest misrepresentations in representational paintings, representational where the viewer knows they can recognize what they're looking at. And I think far too often a number of collectors just assume that the painter goes out and paints exactly what he's seeing. And that's really not the case, or it's rarely the case, never the case in a work of art, that the artist has made, almost countless number of decisions of arrangement of what they want to emphasize and what are they going to show the whole tent, or are they going to crop it? Are they going to have a high horizon? Will it be predominantly a dark or a mid-tone painting where you're kind of designing and emphasizing the smaller, lighter than areas? Or is it a high key painting, a light painting where you're kind of designing and arranging the darker than shapes within? I guess I don't like titles. I would call my work, I guess you'd call it representational, for lack of a better word. But when I'm working on it and I'm thinking about it and I'm composing the pieces, even when I'm out in the field working on location, I'm thinking in abstract terms more than real, representational or realistic terms. And then in my studio pieces, and I spend a lot of time, and it's all when I'm actually, it's almost all abstract thought. There's nothing real in any of these paintings. We're trying to depict, a three-dimensional world on a flat surface with limited colors.
Yeah, we're kind of like, a true artist is sort of like a magician, kind of. Yeah. Like using the tools and yeah. So this next one actually, talk about, some people are like, well, what the heck, or is it pixelized or something wrong with the screen? No. Well, yeah, if you want to talk about this.
I have a series. Anyway, this was a total experimentational piece. It's on a 4x5 foot panel that has a loose grid of 1/2 inch squares. So there are 11,520 squares on this panel. And at no time did I ever put a color on a second square. So every square or mosaic on this was individually mixed. And I learned more about doing this when I'm working on this piece about color And I just did this not too long ago. I've been painting for a number of years, and I had a pretty good sense of value and temperature, but I learned a ton about the hue and the chroma of a color, of how you can push a color back or bring a color forward just by, without changing the value at all, and increasing the intensity of it, or graying it a little bit and making it recede. And so I was obviously influenced to some degree by Chuck Close's work, but I thought I would come at it from a different perspective than Mr. Close does, where he takes the human head, and through distortion and abstraction forces us to look at it from a different perspective. I took what I thought might commonly be passed by, or in this case walked over, and tried to force the viewer. So I'm not sure if the viewers can recognize what it is.
Try to move down maybe this way, like as I'm zooming like that. I think maybe they can
so
see it.
Board, do you see what it is?
Yeah, it's you're looking down on the forest floor.
Yeah, this is just the forest floor on our property in Maine. And so I try to do it, through the same kind of distraction or distortion, and through a mosaic effect, create something that is representational but very abstract at the same time.
Now, you worked on this for years or a few years? Or?
Yeah, this was about, of course, I'm working on things while I'm working on this, but it took me about 3 years to paint this.
Yeah, so this was a project for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see just, going from this, that you have the ability to see things differently too.
I don't know if I've ever had more fun working on a painting, because you're just playing in paint, and you're just constantly mixing paint, and it was enjoyable, and I learned an enormous amount from doing this.
No, this is great. So this next one, I just love this. I love the feel of this, I guess, the softness, and yeah.
This piece is October Moon, and it's just west of town. Actually, it's west of Sheridan, coming out on Big Goose Creek. And this painting was the 2000 William Weiss Purchase Award, and it had a home. Mr. Weiss created an award that they purchase a painting, and then it becomes part of the Buffalo Bill Historic Center. So this was the first painting of mine that was acquired by a museum. Again, it's a combination of a number of things. The barn is there. Some of the buildings were borrowed from different locations, and then the sheep were added to give a little life to the scene. And then it's again an abstraction. It's kind of playing the warmer grasses and the red barn against that cooler kind of pale gray plum sky, and that contrast of color and temperature.
What I love, I'm going to make this a little smaller. What I love is the softness of the edges on the trees where it hits the sky. The delicate. Let's zoom in on just how delicate you handle the transition between the sky and the. I guess I know. Was this in the fall, right? Or you said that? Yep.
Yeah, it's just in the fall that some of the leaves are still on the trees, but kind of mass them together, and particularly in the evening, as your depth of field is greatly reduced and everything kind of flattens out as the light starts to fade. And it does a lot of the editing and the simplification for you. So it's
and then the subtleness of the of the sky, from this cool to warm, and you have the middle area during sunset, or it gets this band of pinkish. We see this out in the Southwest all the time when the sun sets on the opposite side looking east.
Yeah, and it's really what's happening is there's a title for it called the Belt of Venus. And as that sun sets to the west, or behind us in this case, that on the horizon, you start to see that it's a cast shadow from the Earth that is causing that slight, cooler than band on the horizon. And then there's a little warmer band up above. And that's the diffused light, but that's actually the shadow that the Earth is casting.
Yeah, it's so delicate when you see it with your own eyes. It's a difficult thing to translate onto onto canvas, because it's so
really exciting once you see it and you understand what it is.
Yeah, no, it's a beauty. So we have next one, Sunday Matinee.
Again, this is similar in the sense that it's about the same time of day, though instead of looking east, I'm looking west just as the sun is set. But again, all the light kind of envelops all the little branches and the twigs, and they soften and they become a nice abstract shape. The idea with this was there was a vibration in the sky, and actual air temperature, I think, caused by the extreme cold, and then the time of day of that light just dropping below the Bighorn Mountains there. And what the original idea was to try to depict and convey that vibration of light. There was a shimmer to it. And up close on the original, I don't know if you'd be able to see it on this, it kind of has this neutral gray-green sky, and then on the top half or top third of the sky, I stippled some pink color in there to try to visually create this the effect that I felt. Interesting thing is that my daughter was with me. We were coming back from town in the studio, and I did a couple sketches, and I was there about 10 or 15 minutes writing myself some notes, and I glanced over to the left, and there it was a red-tailed hawk sitting in a neighboring tree outside of the picture plane. And I often wonder if birds and animals see or sense beauty, and I'm convinced they do. I think it's a little absurd to think that we're the only animals on the planet that can appreciate beauty. And so this red-tailed hawk in this particular instance seemed to be enjoying the exact same thing that my daughter and I had been witnessing. And so once I noticed that, I kind of decided to put it in the painting, and then kind of designed all the trees and the where to place them around that. And the hawk is kind of the star of or maybe a co-star spectator in this piece.
No, I think it's a great addition. Plus, as I zoom in, you have this very gentle red, or not red, but warm color note on the top of the mountain. Let's see.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Gabor, because in all that, when I was out and doing a lot of plein air painting, I didn't notice that very much. And it wasn't until I really started to take my color charts and just sit and observe and that line, that little vibration against the darker area and a lighter area is called an Apelles line, I believe from a 5th century Greek painter. But I notice it all the time, particularly at first light in the morning and in the evening. But a lot of times I'll see it at the theater or around a spotlight, and I notice it all the time, and it really I think is something that one can use once you start to notice it and enhance the effect of light.
Yeah, it's very subtle, obviously, because the value is very close to the sky value. So you don't, I mean, it's not like in your face, but it's there when you look at it. It just enhances. Yeah. And yeah, I love the foreground too, the abstraction in the foreground, same thing.
And again, that the warmth of those foreground grasses, is kind of it's altered a little bit from reality, but hopefully a nice complementary color to the blue of the mountains, and so you get that play, pushing the mountains back a little bit and creating a little texture and a couple of visual patterns to ease the viewer into the painting. And
I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the simplicity of the mountain, going back to the 10th piece, how you have the background more simple, because if you would have complicated this mountain, with more detail, it would have stole the focus from I think from the trees, right? It's just, you wanted to kind of
painting. I think it's just a constant reassessment of what your painting is, and this scene is one could paint for years right on this location, and if you're creating works of art, then each one is slightly different. You might have a high horizon on the next painting and focus on the grass and the textures in the foreground, but and so it's as you're working on it, it's a constant reassessment of what is this particular painting, what's the statement, or what was my idea on this piece. And so, Gabor, you're exactly right that there are many more rock outcroppings and open plains, faces on the mountain. And if you start to add all those, then they start to distract from the central theme of the painting, which is that vibrating light, and in this case, adding the red-tailed hawk as a
yeah. The reason I just again wanted to mention that is when someone's looking at this, it's not a. It was a thought out process. It wasn't. You just happened to didn't want to put as much detail into it. So, yeah, I think it's important for the collector to understand. A lot goes into the design of this, and I love this piece. This was from a series of paintings, right? It's you guys did this. This
is in 2001. Dory and I moved to Midcoast, Maine, and then my good friend and fellow painter Jeff Parker had the idea of retracing the Lewis and Clark Trail in preparation for an exhibition celebrating the bicentennial of it. And so I would come out and fly out from Maine and meet Jeff, and he would pick me up at various locations along the Missouri River. And this is one where we painted all day, traveled, and we had a copy of their journals. We were camping right on the edge of the river here, and it was just those last fleeting moments of that, the last 5-7 minutes of light, and so. But once again, it's though it's representational, or at least I hope it is. it's when I'm working on it, this is really just an arrangement of abstract violets and warmer, orangey gray. And so, I try to take the landscape that's there and arrange or select certain draws or crevices or the bluff that's casting the shadow, and then try to space those in an artistic arrangement. And a lot of times I hear music when I'm working on a composition of the different rhythms and patterns, but it rarely resembles what that hillside looked like. I'm borrowing and choosing and editing a lot of things out, hoping to come up with what looks like a natural, realistic or representational, but I'm really trying to paint the emotional connection to this time of day and to this specific scene.
Oh, it's a great feel to this. And the rocks in the foreground, again, the rocks could have stole the thunder from the upper part too. So you simplified the rocks by far. I mean, we all seen rocks, pebbles, and shores. You really downplayed the rocks here to upplay the back area. At least that's what.
This is a thing that kind of went against the natural law of things, because the tendency is that as things get closer, they're warmer in temperature, but I intentionally cooled those rocks so that I could keep all of the neutral and warmer violets on that distant hillside because of the light bouncing around, the ambient light bouncing, affecting the colors. So I made that shore in the foreground a little cooler than it was or would be in reality. Yeah.
And when you talk about this, it's somebody doesn't paint, it's like, oh, that's a lot of stuff. But ultimately, when you look at the painting, it has to work, right? It's the end goal, and then you can deconstruct it later if you're a painter. But it's, as long as it works, right, within the four corners. Yeah. Oh, it's a great piece. And this is the nursery tree. I love this piece. This is great.
Thank you very much. This is, from my standpoint, it's an abstract composition of these cooler blues, cooler than blues, against this pale lemony yellow sky. It's just the first eastern, the first rays of light before, 10, 15 minutes before the sun actually comes above the horizon. This is very close. This is about 200 yards from the location of the Sunday matinee. I'm just looking east instead of looking west. The cows weren't there, but anybody that's been around cattle know that on these frigid mornings that they'll go underneath the trees for both protection and for warmth. And so again, they were added later, but they were in my original idea when I saw this. And then it's trying to build up some of the texture where the paint can be of some visual interest without taking away or breaking up the large value planes that is the strength of the composition.
And when I saw this painting, the image of it the first time, I didn't even notice the cows. I'm sure you tied in. It's interesting how you tied in the body of the cow, that the value is. I'm sure that was that intentional, or would you want to hide them like that?
I hope I hope they're kind of a discovery. It's just kind of the way it happens in nature. You'll be out walking, or something you don't notice them right away, and then there'll be a little movement, and you'll catch something out of the corner of your eye, and you wait a minute,
Yeah.
or 6 or 8 cows huddled up underneath there, all in a big cow ball.
No, that's great. And you had the similar warmness in that on the ridge there.
Yeah, again, this is a case where you see that a Pellis line on the horizon, which is just a vibrating, a lot of times a complementary color of that light as it's meeting the horizon.
Yeah, it's and it's so easy to, as a painter, to get in there with those strong colors, right? It's holding back, as the grays is the one that actually is the power of a painting. I think the grays are the ones which I see a lot of your paintings. You're holding back till the last moment and just giving away a little bit of the color.
Thank you. I think color to me is, again, I hear music a lot of times, and if you're at an orchestra and all of the instruments are playing to their full strength, you really don't have any orchestration. You have a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And color is the same way. You have to kind of decide how you're going to key the painting, what your main temperature is going to be, and then you can add subtle, either complementary or at times contradictory colors, depending on what you want the energy of the painting. But if you paint, in this case, if you paint the sky, a brilliant yellow, then it starts to compete with the blue, and this is not a brilliant blue at all. And then to me, you get a lot of visual noise or static, and you lose a lot of the harmonious elements of it.
It's like someone talking.
When I'm actually in the field, whether I'm taking notes or just sitting observing, a lot of times, I'll hear Bach, or I'll hear Eric Satie, or any of the great classical composers, or there are times where I hear the Beatles or Led Zeppelin. It just depending on the scene or. But I do hear music quite a bit, both in the inspirational part of the painting, and definitely while I'm working on it, of all the little negative shapes, the space within the darker elements, or the spacing of the cattle or the branches on the tree. I get my information from nature, but then I bend it to my will where it fits. I don't feel I'm a slave to what's there in nature.
Yeah, I think music, and I'm talking about classical without any words, and also paintings, which don't have words. The emotional aspect of both is so strong, because doesn't matter what language you're speaking when you listen to that music without the words. If it doesn't, like classical music, it's either going to put you in this mood or that mood. It's already there. It's kind of pre-built into the tune. I think same thing with the visual language of painting.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So, and we got a few more. The Salt Lick. This is I love the light in this. Such a strong morning. Could be morning or afternoon. I'm assuming it's morning, but
an early morning. And again, so I would consider this a high key painting, in the sense that it's mostly on the lighter scale. And so what I'm really doing is designing with the darker elements, both the Black Angus cows and the darker buildings. So that's kind of the value, the way I come up with the composition. And then you can go carry that over into the temperature. I would say this is predominantly a cooler painting, with the cool violets on the top of the snow, and the distant peaks. And so that gives you kind of a stage to place these warmer, old weathered farm buildings. And the key to it here is anybody who's been on a ranch, it's just the work is never done. You almost always feel like you're behind the ball instead of ahead of it. So there's constantly stuff that needs to be repaired. The truck on the kind of the middle of the right-hand side painting was out of this particular picture plane, but I wanted to bring it in both to add another element of temperature, and then the building up on the upper left-hand corner was a big metal building, but it was I think it was a brown. And so I just took the similar color of the cab of the old truck. It's really just left there for storage, and then made the building where it can relate to kind of play that temperature and color back and forth, and kind of lead the viewer through the painting by that. And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
The foreground, I love the texture and the snow on here. Yeah.
This is a case, and as you can probably see from the pieces that we're talking about, I love wintertime. I don't know if it's my favorite time of the year. I think I'd probably love the change of seasons more than I do any one. But this is a case that, snow is so exciting to paint because it's never white. It's so reflective that it's almost any color but white. But I wanted to, in this particular piece, with all that's going on with the cattle and the buildings, I wanted to keep the foreground relatively simple. I didn't want a lot going on in there, but I didn't want it to be flat. So I really built up the texture in the pigment itself and manipulated the paint to hopefully create some interest without taking away from the overall scene or overall feeling of the painting.
No, it didn't. It's just so great when I think a great painting should have that ability of when you go up close to it, it's got the calligraphy and what you did here versus stepping back a few feet and so on and so forth. I think it should speak to you different distances differently.
It's I'm fascinated, I know, with paintings that I'm drawn to in a museum or in a gallery, that what you think you're looking at from across the room when you approach it and you get, a foot or two away, or, I encourage people to try to, put their nose almost right on the canvas and get, a foot to 6 inches away. Then all of a sudden, what you thought you were looking at from across the room becomes something completely different. So when I'm in the studio, I spend a lot of time manipulating the paint itself with wire brushes and scrubbies and fingers, and I'll draw into the wet paint with pencils or different implements, and to try to create the illusion of something from afar. But when you get up to it, close to it, it's total abstraction.
Yeah, it definitely shows in all of these pieces that we've shown that what you just spoke about. And I love this. This is the last piece that we're showing here, but I just love the stillness of this, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of what struck me to it.
Again, this is another painting that Dory and I own. This is painted, I believe, on New Year's Day. It may have been New Year's Eve day, but Dory was pregnant with our first child. She was about 7 months pregnant or so, and it was one of those on the spot pieces that had the feeling of that day and of that kind of poignant moment in one's life where you're about to become a father, and your life really changes. There's nothing like it. And so, like the first one where I met Dory, this is a very personal painting, and it has a great deal of emotional content to it because of the events surrounding it.
Yeah, it's, and especially when we hear the story behind the painting, I think once we hear it, it can even speak to that certain person personally too. They could have been going through something in their life also, and yeah, it's just interesting how connections happen in paintings. It's not just a technical thing which we speak about, but how emotional.
When I think in all the creative field, you can't separate your life from your work. It's the things that are happening outside of your life find their way into your work. And I think a lot of times that raw emotion is what gives it the strength. It doesn't all have to be, in fact, it rarely is happy, or it can be, they can be hard emotions at times.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the artist's job to have that basic fundamental skill to convey the message that they want to convey. I think that's always a challenge to, but that's the artist's job. That's more the nuts and bolts, to have that technical ability to get that through to the viewer. But well, I just want to thank you, Tim, again for spending time with us.
Good board, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I'm still not totally comfortable on this this new format, but I think it's here to stay.
I think so. No, I think you did great. I hope that the folks that will go to the show, or the ones that cannot go to the show, will get to enjoy the paintings through this medium, and the ones that do go, I think they'll look at it a little bit differently. I really believe that once there's a story behind it.
There is a catalog that is printed that
has, right.
It has all 53 paintings in it. They're arranged chronologically in the catalog. It can be purchased through the museum at the Brinton Museum, or it can be purchased on my website also.
Yeah. And make sure you grab one, because usually these catalogs are limited numbers, and that's it. So yeah, make sure you grab one. So again, it's May 15th to September 6th at the Brinton Museum, and yeah, I hope you guys get to see it and travel and enjoy the actual paintings with your own eyes. So thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Gabor. Take care.
Bye.